Joker believes in one truth above all. Anyone can become just like him. All you need is one bad day. And when you consider his extremely long list of crimes, it's a little hard to narrow down the worst overall. But there's definitely one that stands out for the Clown Prince of Crime. Inside the pages of Injustice Year 1, penned incredibly by Tom Taylor, Joker gave Superman his one bad day. How'd he do it? Well, he used Scarecrow's fear toxin to convince Superman he was duking it out with Doomsday, one of the few beings in the universe that Kal-El doesn't have to hold back against. And at the end of the fight, Superman realized the mistake he had made. Turns out it wasn't Doomsday he was fighting, it was Lois Lane. He had harmed her to the point of death, along with what was growing inside of her. Now, you might think that was enough to set off Superman right then and there, but Joker decided to nuke Metropolis for good measure on top of it. Just because he could. For fun. Which I have a feeling is about to be a party line today. In the aftermath of Avengers vs. X-Men, Captain America formed a unity squad to unite the two groups into one. Instead of inspiring goodwill in the hearts of mutants and humankind alike, it inspired hatred in the heart of Red Skull, who decided he needed to exterminate all of mutant kind. In his first act of anti-mutant major crime, he used a superhuman named Honest John, who could manipulate people's minds to broadcast on national television that people needed to deal with the mutant threat, leading to a lot of killings across the country. Red Skull then upped the evil by swiping the brain of Charles Xavier, who was deceased at the time, and Red Skull merged the professor's mind with his own, giving himself the ability to send out a mass telepathic signal encouraging the people of New York to attack mutants. Yeah, I'm sure you can figure out how that ended up. In an issue of Sandman that DC itself billed as the scariest DC story of all time, Dr. Destiny took over a 24-hour diner and tormented its customers for an entire day. Using the power of Morpheus's amulet, Destiny mind-controlled the patrons of the diner to convince them to complete horrible deeds. Well, the highlight reel included one man chopping off his finger to feed to Destiny, another patron driving a nail into the hand of another, one of them ripping out a man's throat with their teeth, and ultimately all of them lying lifeless at Destiny's feet. The most horrific part of the whole ordeal is just how utterly pointless it all was. When asked why Destiny was doing it, he simply replied, "Because I can." And that might be the scariest reason of all, because it really shows how there's no humanity left in Destiny, if there ever really was any in the first place. What the Purple Man did to Jessica Jones was beyond evil. So his powers are pretty horrific. He can make anybody do what he tells them to do. When he used to make people give him their money or free food, it was often just a lightweight power. However, in Brian Michael Bendis' Alias, he did the worst thing imaginable. Jessica Jones, then known as Jewel, showed up to stop him, and he told her to sit down, and from that moment on, he kept her. In not a good way. While he never physically harmed her, he made her watch as he did awful things to other women. It was a form of torment that left her traumatized until he finally freed her, told her to attack the Avengers, and that left her in a coma, and kind of ended her entire career. So Old Man Logan tells a story of a future gone wrong. The villains have won. America's a wasteland. Wolverine lives a quiet life with his family, mostly left alone by the villains of the past, but is unwilling to help the heroes fight for tomorrow. Wolverine eventually reveals to Hawkeye what happened to him to extinguish his spirit. Turns out, during the villains' craziness against the heroes, Wolverine believed the X-Mansion was totally overrun by supervillains. So he fought hard and with lethal force, and when the fighting was done, Mysterio revealed that every villain that Wolverine thought he had slain was an illusion. Logan had been fighting against his friends. He stood horrified over the mangled remains of his closest buddies, all viciously taken out by his own claws. So Red Skull has just done so many awful things that I kind of had to mention him again today. So Red Skull used the powers of a woman named Kobik, which is a sentient cosmic cube, to replace Captain America's memories with a version of his life in which he's always been secretly loyal to Hydra. This led to the event known as Secret Empire, where Cap helps Hydra take control of the United States. Now, this act was particularly heinous because it wasn't just a move against Captain America. It was a move against everybody who viewed the hero as a symbol of hope, including the outraged fans in real life. Even when Cap eventually returned to his usual America-loving self, the damage to his reputation was done. Like, I remember when this all came to light, way before I ever got interested in comics or heroes, and seeing all my friends in high school frothing at the mouth over how angry they were at this was really bad. Thanos Annual Edition number 1 revealed the dirtiest deed that Thanos ever did, and it all began with him helping an old lady cross the street. An unlikely beginning to the most evil act ever committed, but but Thanos has been one to play the long game when needed. And hey, evil isn't always obvious. So the comic story reveals that during the time when Thanos possessed the Infinity Gauntlet, he was able to use the time gem to pinpoint the exact moment in which he might bring about the greatest number of deaths possible, besides killing half the universe with a snap of his fingers. This led the Mad Titan to a Manhattan street corner where Thanos delayed a bus driver with a glare and, as promised, assisted an elderly woman across the street. What no one realized at the time was that Thanos' apparent random act of kindness averted a chain of events that ultimately would have brought about universal peace. By delaying the bus, Thanos prevented a young woman named Stephanie Kircher from accidentally bumping into a woman named Suzanne, and this prevented the inspiration that would send Stephanie down a path to single-handedly ending world hunger and curing multiple diseases. These breakthroughs in turn would end numerous social ills and turn Earth into a paradise, whose example would inspire other worlds to abandon war and conquest. The twisted icing, or cherry on top of this cake of evil, comes years later, when Thanos visits Stephanie on her deathbed, to not just tell her of the life she would have lived and all the good that would have been done in her name had it not been for his intervention, but to show it to her in a vision. So because of Thanos, Stephanie lived an unaccomplished life and never came close to fulfilling her destiny. She died in tears, knowing for certain how truly wasted her potential had been, and how utterly meaningless her life was in the grand scheme of things, which is awful. There's nothing in the universe Reverse Flash resents more than the happiness of the Allen family. It's well known that Reverse Flash took out Barry Allen's mother, framed his father, but he actually took it a step further. Before dispatching Mrs. Allen, our bad guy systemically ruined the Allens' marriage and made them fall out of love. This both made it more believable to frame Mr. Allen for the offense and ensured that Barry would grow up in an unhappy home. Recently, Reverse Flash made it even worse by going after the other side of the family tree. He used his time travel abilities to befriend and radicalize Barry Allen's future offspring as adults. He then took them back in time to Barry Allen's present and had them destroy Barry's growing up home. Not only has Reverse Flash ruined Allen's past, but he made his future a nightmare as well. So I've already talked about it a bit today, but I know we're all familiar with Thanos' attempts, both in the MCU and the comics, to destroy a significant portion of all life to win the hand of death herself. But did you know he actually achieved his goal at one point and wiped out everything? In Donny Cates' run on Thanos, the title character goes into the future and meets a version of himself that was entirely victorious in his goal. This Thanos had spent thousands of years wiping out not just the heroes of Earth, but every being from every planet. The Black Hand is the leader of the Black Lantern Corps, where the fastest way to join is to kick the bucket. Depicted in Blackest Night, Black Hand began to build a legion of Black Lanterns, mostly comprised of heroes from Earth. He first went to the grave of Bruce Wayne, where he dug up his body and turned him into one of his mindless drones. After doing the same with, Martian Manhunter, he set his sights on living heroes and took out Hawkman, Hawkgirl, and the Elongated Man, who were also forced to join his Dark Legion. Desecrating the graves of Earth's heroes is kind of bad, but forcing them to become villainous zombies is evil enough to go kind of head to head with everything else we've talked about today. Speaking of which, that's all for today, folks. I've been Alexa. See ya!